Hey YouTubers, this is Ishtyak with you once again. I am a Philadelphia-based event and landscape photographer, and welcome to another episode of my photography blog. In this episode, we are going to look at a very cool tool that you can use in Photoshop. It's called the Contentaware tool. The reason we need this, and I'll show this in a demo just a little bit, is that a lot of times we take a picture where the composition is good, but the elements within the frame are not exactly where we want them to be. And this tool is something that enables us to change that. And the picture that we're going to look at now, we have a wonderful framing, we have beautiful composition, but just one element in that frame is a little off from where we want it to be. So we're going to look at how we can fix this, how we can take that and move it to a different place, and how Photoshop will use its own algorithms to analyze what's around and then present us with something very useful. So we'll head on to the processing table and see how we can do this.
Alright, so here we are in Lightroom again. Here we have a photo that has been taken by a friend of mine, and let's look at the information first. This photo, as you see, the first thing, it's been taken at 5 p.m. Right in the middle of summer. That's why it's really very bright, and it would be amazing if this photo were taken, say, 3 hours later, when there was going to be the golden hour. Well, that's not always possible because we're out there, we're hiking, and we need to utilize the best time of the day, which is often the afternoon. So let's see what we can do with the photo. Looking at the other information, everything here is perfect. You need to be at ISO 100 for a clean, noise-free image. The aperture has to be 8 or above, 11, something like that, so that you have a sharp depth of field, from front to back, and of course a very good fast shutter, so there's no camera shake as well. Exposure is perfect. Could probably be made into an HDR or something, but let's see what we have here and what we can do with this. Analyzing the photo, I personally, when I looked at it, I did not like what's right in front, but I liked the element that we have to the right, and I liked the element that we have to the left. And what can we do? Eventually, oops, sorry, I actually had it cropped for some reason. There you go. So that's the whole photo, and I personally, as I said, I like what I have here, and there's a shadow coming in here from someone else, that's or a post or something. If this could be avoided, if the photo could be taken from this location with the blooming flowers in front, or if it could be taken from here, maybe with just one or two of these, that may have been better. But this branch, this bush here, it doesn't give us as much appeal as the foliage that we have here. So aside from trying to process the photo, of course there are things we can do, and we can try a few simple things. What I'm really interested in is how can we move this. And to do that, let's say, just for the sake of it, let's go through the usual workflow. Let's reduce the highlights so we have a little more information in the sky. Let's open up so that we have some more information from the shadow areas. Press down Alt and move the whites and the blacks sliders just a little bit, quite a lot actually in this case, just to make sure that we don't go to the point that we have blown out pixels. Maybe a little bit of clarity if we want, maybe a little bit of vibrance if we want. That's it. So not much. Now if we want, we can play with tone curves. In a different episode, I'm going to talk about how tone curves can be used for days like this, situations like this. I've used it in other cases, but mostly in events, and there are ways of fixing it. If we want, we can come to the HSL panel, the hue, saturation, luminance. One of the things we can do is we can reduce the luminance of, we can turn the sky into more of a blue, but the problem with that, as you just saw, no thanks to the lag, but the problem with that, as you saw, is it turns the lower portion of the clouds into these gray, dark, shadowy areas that I personally don't like. So let's not do that. One of the options that we can do very quickly is to introduce an ND filter. Let's say, oh, I actually had something like this here. Let's delete whatever I had before. So yeah, we can introduce an ND filter here, and if we have something like this, I'm pressing down shift to make sure that it's perfectly horizontal, and I'm letting go. What this does, and I don't know why the other one was there before, what this does is it gives us a gradient, and the top portion is not so burnt out, but again, there are still some things. So there are ways of fixing it. Maybe one decision you can make is you can come to the effects and come to the dehaze slider and just play with it. See what we have. One option for us is we could introduce a lot of haze, or we could go to the right and introduce something that we really like in terms of getting a full view of the structure in the mountains. That's completely up to your taste, and that can be applied selectively once we are in Photoshop. Unfortunately, we can't do that in Lightroom, but let's not worry too much about that. Let's just head over to Photoshop first. So edit in Adobe Photoshop, and instead of other sliders and what we can do, we'll focus on looking at how we can change the composition. We can remove the flowers, and after the fact we can't go and take the photo from that position, and of course you never know, if you moved in that location, the framing would not be so good. You may not have the mountains looking as good as you want. So we come here, what we do is, the first thing is we double click and then we hit OK so that the background layer is not locked anymore. Then we press Command or Control J, or just bring this here to create a copy, and that copy is what we're going to work on, and you'll see in a bit why we want a copy. It's always good to have the original in the background, so that if something goes wrong, we can always always revert to that. So now coming here, the wonderful tool that we have in Lightroom, not in Lightroom, in Photoshop, is this area where you have the healing brush tools. Among those you have the Contentaware move, and what this does, let me brighten it up just a little bit for myself. So what this does is it allows you to draw around an area, then move it. So let's do that. And of course we have the transform on drop option, so this allows you to change the size and whatnot, and it's in move mode, it's not in extend mode, so you can do other things like that. There are lots and lots of options. Let's not go into too much of those right now. Let's look at the basics of how this works. So what I'm doing now is I'm simply creating a selection here, just a selection. Not sure if you can see the marching ants, those dotted lines. So let's see. I'm just drawing around this until I'm here. Alright, so there's my selection. You can barely see it here, but once that selection is here, what we do is simply click and drag and place it, say, here. And of course we have the transform on drop option, so what we can do if we want is we can change the size of it. So if we wanted, we could have moved it closer to us and then increased the size, but if you do something too complicated, that will in turn complicate the blending process. So just as a demo, let me just leave it here and press enter, or we could have clicked on the check mark up there. Let's do that and allow Photoshop some time to blend this and see what it gives us. So there you go. Let me deselect and zoom in just a little bit. Let's look at what we have. So as you see, it's not very well blended, but we have something. It's moved, whatever was to the right is moved here, and whatever was here is actually moved to the right, and they've done a better job there, to be honest. But we need to look at how there's an abrupt fall off in this edge area, the ground that we see here. So all in all, not the best job. So what we can do is, of course, we can go back all the way to before we made our selection. So we can go back and select again and then see if we can make it work. That's one option. The other option in this case, in this particular photo at least, I actually want to change the crop. And if I change it to something close to here, then a lot of the mismatch will be outside of my frame anyway. So that's not something to worry about. But say we have this and we need to fix this. What do we do? To fix it, you can create a mask, and let's select just a black first. Zoom in just a little bit. Let's see, what does my brush say? The opacity is 100%, the flow is 100%. Let me not use such a hard brush. So what I want to do is I want to create a bigger brush which is a little soft, definitely, and let me reduce the opacity to say 60%. And once I have that, I'm going to paint over this with black, and what this will do is it's going to reveal what's below. So below this we had something, and this is just a demo that I'm doing. I'm just going over it again and again to make a point more than anything, to see what's below that. So that's what we have underneath, and that doesn't look good. So we undo that change. Let's increase the opacity just a little bit, and all I'm trying to do is just get something here that takes away the mismatch. And you know, this is foliage. You don't need to be absolutely perfect, but you need to do a decent enough job so that at least in first sight from distance it doesn't pop as something that's completely gone wrong. That's the idea. Not spending too much time, you can mask away all you want. That was the whole point. You can mask away, or you could have just extended the frame. But once you have that, and of course this wasn't the best photo that I took, decided to use it on, because it is foliage, it's very high frequency. That's why for Photoshop it's very difficult to analyze, compared to, for example, if there was a rock sitting here and I wanted to move the rock from this area to some other area, it would have been a much easier task, easier computation. So something to keep in mind over there. And let me just crop out some of the areas over there that really are not appealing to me as much, and let's come here and create somewhat of a tight crop with the photo here, and let's just get rid of the rest. So this is what we have compared to what we had before, where if we introduced a similar crop to this photo, say something like this, say something similar to this. I'm not even looking at the other one, but say if you had this, it doesn't really look as nice because this foliage is not full. There's not enough flowers, but you can move something from the other side, bring it over here, and give yourself a bit more of a room to work with. So, and you can change a major composition element and allow yourself more creative freedom after the fact.